the news, especially lately, the rains that we've had almost a week ago, people are still feeling the impacts right now. What do you see from an engineer's perspective, from a Kenyan's perspective? What does that tell you about the society we live in and the structures that we have in place?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Of course, quite saddening to see the kind of pictures that we see every time this happens. It tells you there's a failure somewhere. It's a failure in planning. It's a failure of thinking ahead of our infrastructure so that it can take up what nature brings our way. Because really, we are rational beings and we are supposed to think ahead so that we are not victims or caught unawares by instances where the fury of nature comes and then we are being caught up by floods and all that. We have things we can do with proper planning, with laying out infrastructure that can take in the kind of overflow and the storm that we get, and there's a way of containing it and channeling it and evacuating it in a proper manner that it doesn't threaten our very existence. Because we're seeing instances of even death by droning and destruction of property and all that. So it's a clear disaster that emanates from a failure to plan and think ahead.
Right. So walk us through the steps that you've mentioned. So picture this. We have rains. What should we be expecting? What should we be anticipating when we get a notification from the Met Department that, hey, it's going to rain and it's going to be heavy? What should we expect to see?
Now, first things first, the way you want to think about this is to imagine that if there was nothing constructed in Nairobi or whichever other urban setting, the ground would have capacity to absorb the rains when they come and percolate into the ground. And then the water, once percolates into the ground, it forms part of what we call groundwater. And we talk about groundwater level and stuff like that. We talk about recharging the aquifers, which we later can extract through boreholes and get underground water. Now, when you have a situation whereby the ground is covered or paved by either tarmac, by cabro, by roof, or any slab, so that you replace the ground that should have been available to absorb the rainwater, what you have done, you have created what we call runoff. Now, runoff is what now becomes the free water that is running, and it is what we are now meeting as floods. Now, in the process of development, you want to think about that moment you have replaced the ground that should have absorbed water. You now plan for the runoff, which is resorting, because the rainwater will hit the surface, it will run off, it will not be able to be absorbed into the ground. Now plan for that runoff. There are several ways of doing that. You could create ground recharge wells, you can do that. You could create channels and open channels, stormwater drainage systems and infrastructure. You could create that so that then you evacuate the runoff. Now, when you do not evacuate the runoff, that runoff is going to become a menace because water must find its way out. Has to find a way. Where it finds its way and then it meets you, it will probably carry your property, it will soak your property. Somehow it must find its way out. And so that is the scenario we are in. We have paved the ground surface and we have not provided a way out for water to be evacuated in a safe manner. Yeah.
All right. Now, they say when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. But some people would also observe and say it's not possible to stop everybody from constructing. It's not possible to stop what we're doing. I mean, we can't stand in the way of progress. Just like water, progress is unstoppable. However, there's things we can do. I mean, the milk has been spilled, but there's things we can do to remedy the situation or salvage it somewhat. What are your thoughts on that? What can we do? What should we do?
Now, the first things first, we must acknowledge there's a problem. There's a big problem because we have created paved services. And when we have created paved services, we have created conditions relevant for the runoff that then collects and accumulates and becomes a lot of water. And you're seeing it run off now. When we acknowledge that, then we invest on the storm evacuation infrastructure. Storm sewers, we create them because we have seen roads or paved services created, and people are not mindful about the evacuation for the stormwater. We need to think about, when we have done a road, side drains, we should think about how to evacuate water through the side drains. We want to think about, when you do a building, the down pipes, and how do you deposit the water from the roof? How do you deposit it? We have rainwater harvesting and all that. We must be mindful about that.